My name is Agnes Xu. 您好. My name is Agnes Xu. I'm the resident scholar and director for arts and culture at China Institute. I understand one of our former head, China Institute, is with us this afternoon because we are so deeply honored to have a very special 贵宾 guest this afternoon who will enlighten us with your journey from China, Hong Kong, Taiwan to the United States. We're just so delighted to have all of you joining us this afternoon. And I would like to introduce our, as I would call, our resident sage of China Institute benches, Mr. Ben Wang. And my dear friend.
Thanks. Hardly. Don't trust Agnes with everything else but this. Well, this event has been in the making for the past 6 or 7 months. When it was suggested by the president of China Institute, who is giving a party tonight in her Connecticut home. That's why she is sadly absent, and she asked me to convey her sincere apology to Dr. Wang. So when she suggested to my co-chair, my name is Ben Wang, and I have a wonderful co-chair in Dr. He Yong. And when Sarah suggested to two of us, she says, what do you think? She said, I met a legend in Washington, D.C., and I had the honor of being seated next to him and during a very important lunch. And we were just overjoyed, I mean, what could the answer have been? No? What are we, blind? So quickly we said, yes, when? Then we started the correspondence. And we're just so elated. So can you imagine how happy I am? So that's why that might explain the overly emotional state that I'm in. As the American English writers, they say, great emotion renders one speechless, and I am on the verge of being speechless. But speak I must. So here I am. If I were to give a citation of all the achievements and accomplishments of Dr. Wang, then I'm afraid I will have to be here at the podium for 2 hours. And I think that would be a big taboo. But a brief introduction there must be. So let me start. Dr. Wang Zi made his early and lasting brilliant career as librarian at the Library of Congress, where he built the Chinese collection from 300,000 to over 1 million volumes. And that in itself is an astounding achievement. Co-founder of the U.S.-China Policy Foundation and founder of Washington Journal of Modern China, Dr. Wang Zi has taught history and U.S.-China relations at Georgetown University since 1968. He has also taught and lectured at Columbia University, Yale University, among others. Dr. Wang's publications include America and China since 1945, A Brief History, George W. Bush and China, Policies, Problems, and Partnership. From what I just read, a few accomplishments that I cited, we can tell that Dr. Wang, indeed, he's a living legend and of Chinese culture and matters concerning the U.S.-China relations. For this event, Dr. Wang, for our benefit, will sign his memoir, A Compelling Journey from Peking to Washington. He is instrumental and the driving force in the U.S.-China relationship. But to say this is a gross understatement. Does that explain my excitement over his visit to our little Renwen society? So I'm just overjoyed. For the past few days, I've been doing my homework. Actually, it was not. It was a homework done with pleasure. I have devoured his latest book, which, as I said before, is called A Compelling Journey from Peking to Washington. Indeed, it's a compelling reading. It's fascinating. There's no dogmatic, it's not pedantic, it's fascinating, historical, and it's a Bildungsroman of a great man and his view of the United States of America and China and their relationship. So after reading his book, a few lines by Wordsworth entered my mind when Wordsworth wrote the following lines, enough of science and art. Close up those barren leaves, come forth, and bring with you a heart that watches and receives. And here we have a man with a heart that watches and receives in Dr. Wangji. So without further ado, I will present to you the preeminent, one and only Dr. Wangji.
Thank you, number of new friends. I'm so happy, honored to be here today, this afternoon, to say a few words about myself and about my book. And I hope everybody would ask me some questions later on. So we have, let me, since I had a surgery last year, the doctor told me I was standing up. I can stand here, but it's better for me sitting down, okay? Thank you very much. And I don't know what to say at the beginning, but I want to tell you something. I'm here today. I feel so sentimental because my first visit was Chinese student was 1949 September. Wow. How many years ago?
50.
Over 63 years. At that time, not many Chinese students studied in the United States. Whole Columbia University, about maybe 10, 15 Chinese students. Most of them come back to China to build the motherland, construct the motherland. Some of them come back later in 1980. They told me, Xiao Wang, you asked me to go back. Why didn't you go back yourself? we were in the Newcomb, and you are in the United States, enjoy life. I said, well, but anyway, this is my first trip here to meet, at that time, the director, Dr. Meng Zhi. He was in charge of Chinese students. At that time, in 1949, my first trip to Hong Kong, it took me 3 days, 3 nights, flew over here to Hong Kong, stopped every island, Guam Island, Wake Island, and Honolulu, and San Francisco. And then I took a train from San Francisco, 3 days, Chicago, and New York City. And then I took a taxi, went to Manhattan College to study English. That's my beginning of my American journey. I will talk about my China experience. At that time, when you use a Republic of China passport, I got my passport from Guangzhou. At that time, the national government already retreated to South China. I got my passport in the Guangzhou Foreign Ministry in Guangzhou. And when you hold Kuomintang, national Chinese passport, when you come to the United States, you must, as Chinese student, you must come here to meet Dr. Meng Zhi. He was kind of like a coordinator for new students come over here. He will tell you what to do as a student from China. I don't know whether we have that kind of institution anymore coming up. There are so many students from China, from Taiwan, and at that time, you can count by finger how many students in New York City. So I met Dr. Meng Zhi. He told me, he said, Wang Zhi, you're a young man. Don't get involved in any politics. better go to school, study the best you can. Don't side with any parties, any politics, and just study. That was Meng Zhi told me. So I followed his advice. I didn't get involved in any politics. In those years, 1949, because there were students from mainland China, not many students from Taiwan, particularly studied undergraduate. I was only the 3 or 4 Chinese students from university studying undergraduate, freshmen studying English. So I was kind of lonely, but I had 4 students, Chinese students, in my honey college. They're all from mainland China, from Hong Kong. I think that most of them gone. And maybe only one is still alive here in New York City. I'm not talking since 1950s. Anyway, this is my beginning of my China involvement. My most recent visit here was 1985, when Mr. Wang Wang, a Chinese artist, art historian, and published many books about Chinese art, also a Chinese rare book expert. When he was at the Federal here in 1985, he sponsored one-day conference on Chinese rare books. Since I was the head of a Chinese collection at the Library of Congress, he invited me here to talk about the Chinese rare book in the Library of Congress. So I had the honor to be here. I published something here, and there was a lot of people who want to know about Library of Congress. And this is my, after that, I remember I come here again. This is the first time since 1985. It's a long time. Long time. When I came over here today, I told the driver, I said, you go out from Lexington and turn up. You can't, there's one way going this way, so we have to go 6th Avenue and make a turn all the way down here. Anyway, this is my personal experience with Chinese Institute. I want to thank again everybody in the Chinese Institute and also my friends here in today's event. And I don't know how much I learned from it, but I will be happy to tell you my experience. And this book was published late last year. This is another book I've written in Chinese, published in Hong Kong 2 years ago. This one will be published in mainland China shortly this year. And it's published by commercial price in Chinese. It's different than this one. It's not translation, but if we tell your life story, you can't change much your life, but it's a different approach. This is a book, and Ben has just mentioned, about my book about Georgia W. Bush in China. And this was published about 2 years ago. And I don't want to tell you how many books I published. I have 2 more will come out this year. And one on Library of Congress, one on U.S. China Relations we published by New York publisher here. Now, let's get back to my book, A Compelling Journey. I don't know if compelling journey is the right vocabulary or not. Before I sent it to the publisher, I asked my son. My son was born here, and he is a correspondent in Washington Post. But he doesn't cover politics, only sports. Football, basketball, baseball, boxing. He just covered boxing at Atlantic City last week. And lacrosse, you name it. Every game, he's expert. I'm not expert on anything. I don't even know the rules of baseball. I don't know my son getting so interested in sports. But he's now a senior editor in the sports section of Washington Post. So this is something I did not expect. I have a son interested in sports. I'm not interested. I'm not hating sport, but I just no interest in sports. I'm interested in Chinese art, Chinese literature, Chinese culture, Chinese drama. And when I was a student, I married you. Later on, in 1952, 57, I wrote several Chinese plays. In fact, the first Chinese modern drama performed in a theater was written by me in 1952. Performed at University of Maryland theater. That was 1952. March 8th, Women's Day of China. And the title of the play, Long Live Ladies. So this is about my younger days, funny stories, okay? And I came here, I decided to come to the United States my son told me, I said, son, you tell me what title I'm going to use in my book. We talk about different titles. Fulfilling American dream. That's too corny. Don't say fulfilling American dream. Everybody has a dream. What is the American dream? Say, my son said, Daddy, your trip very compelling. What do you mean compelling? I don't understand the word. He said, Daddy, just use the word. You can't go wrong with that word. He was born here. His English better than mine. I said, okay, son, I listen to you. So this is one which the title, Senator Publisher, A Compelling Journey. I said, something missing. I said, Daddy, use Bringing a New Life in America. I said, okay, that's better. Make the book more complete, the title. But that's how the book title came about. And the publisher took them about 2 years to get it published. Estimating probably 2008, 2009. And then last year, they sent me the proof. We want the proof back in 1 month. So that's a lot of typos in the book here. So you have to, if you find anything wrong, forgive me. And I tried the best I could. But if any mistake, just forgive me. Now, the book covers probably 4 parts of my life. The first part was from 1930s, since I remember things in 1936, 37, as a kid. So how I grew up in China from Marco Polo Bridge in 1937, July 7th. And I saw the Japanese invade China, invade Beijing as a kindergarten student. But I remember. I saw the Chinese army wounded back in the city of Beijing. I was in ice cream hospital. I said, what's going on here? And the servant told me, Japanese attacked China. I didn't have no idea. What do you mean attack? So we went home, and my mother said, let's leave the city. We left the city in 2 days, went to Nanjing. At that time, Nanjing was the capital of the Republic of China. And that's how I experienced the first war between China and the Japanese. I'm not sure everybody here knows. The war lasted from 1937 until 1945. How many years?
8 years.
8 years. During the 8 years, my family first moved to Kaifeng, Henan province. Because my father was the deputy commander of the first war zone in Henan, Anhui, and Hubei. Because my father was in charge of Manchuria, Northeast China armies, 5 armies, about 170,000 people. After young Marshal Zhang Zhenliang staged a coup d'etat in Xi'an, after we reached Generation 6, he was in the house arrest since 1937. And my father was the one commanding the Manchurian troops. The headquarters in those years were in Henan, Kaifeng. In the summer of 1937, as a young kid, first grade, we moved to a mountain resort called the Rooster Mountain Resort, Jigongshan, which bordered Hubei and Henan, not too far from Xinyang, if you know Chinese geography. And so we stayed there. All of the so-called senior Chinese officers, Kuomintang officers, generals, at least 5 generals, their family stayed in Rooster Mountain Resort. Sun Yanzhong, Sang Zhen, you know the names. And this is all, Sang Zhen was governor of Henan. And this is the people seen. So I had a chance to meet all these people. 2 army commanders from Manchuria. One later on killed in Shanghai battle. This is my personal experience. I could not forget it. But Japan continued to move toward the Rooster Mountain. So our family decided to move to Wuhan. When my mother and myself and my sister and 2 brothers and plus servants, we go down from the mountain to the railroad station. we wait for our train. At that time, we can have a special train just for us, for one family. We waited at the platform. I saw a train coming to I thought that's our train. But it was not for us. I saw several hundred wounded Chinese soldiers. Arms coming off, legs coming off, blood. As a kid, I said, what's going on here? I asked my mother. He said, this is some wounded soldiers. I said, but take care of them. No doctors. No. They were hungry. They're shouting at the government. This is a so-called Manchurian army retreat from the battlefield to somewhere I do not know. So my mother, we cooked about 300 mantou Chinese bread and eggs, boiled eggs, distributed to all the soldiers. I had so deep impression in my mind. I will never forget how bad the war can be. But again, in those years, fighting Japanese was a necessity. Because China was invaded by Japan since 1931, Mukden incident, and later on, Marco Polo Bridge. But China had no way to really win the war, but China still put up a fight with Japan. So after our train arrived, my mother said, just go on the train, don't worry about the other soldiers. And then we went to Wuhan. We stayed there until 1938, after Chinese New Year. Every day, the Japanese airplane bombed Wuhan, like the coast, hiding in bomb shelters. I don't know how many people have experienced something. Do you have any experience? Go to bombing shelter? No, right? This is my personal experience as a kid. I don't know how many Chinese students now in the United States have this kind of experience. I'm not trying to tell, I'm an old man, I want to tell my experience. I'm going to tell you, as a young child, 6, 7 years old, experience this kind of to see the atrocity of the Japanese. The people just dying on the street in Wuhan. So my father decided to resign from the government because there was no way for them to fight war with Japan. So when we moved to Hong Kong, we rode a train, Yuehan Railway, from Wuhan to Guangzhou. It took us 3 days to get there. When we got in Guangzhou, I still remember we stayed in the best hotel in Guangzhou, Aiqun Hotel. That was the tallest building in Guangzhou in 1939. My father said, Japan is going to occupy Guangzhou. Very soon. Let's move to Hong Kong. That's how I made my first trip to Hong Kong in 1939 spring. When I got to Hong Kong, I said, this is a modern city. So many things. You can buy Coca-Cola. You can buy chocolate. You can buy corned beef. And I never had it before. So we moved to a hotel just by the harbor, Hong Kong side, called North American Hotel, 美洲饭店. And my mother said, let's buy some bread, make some sandwich, and slice corned beef. I enjoyed the corned beef so much. This is a good place to live. I like Hong Kong. That's my beginning with school in Hong Kong. As a first grade to learning Cantonese. I went to a school called here, which is Chinese elementary school, in the mid-level Hong Kong side, Robinson Road. We stayed in Robinson Road. I remember the number 47 Robinson Road. That was my most happy period of my life as a kid. And I remember I ate ice cream in Dairy Farm. I'm sure in some of you in Hong Kong, that's the best ice cream place. Also another place, Anloyan, I don't know how to use it. And Anloyan is the best place for eating hot fudge sundaes, ice cream sodas. Every night my mother took me to Anloyan. I enjoyed that. I said, this is really paradise. First in Hong Kong, but in Hong Kong in that time was paradise for many so-called refugees. Because everywhere in China was under Japanese bombing over in Chongqing, the wartime capital, national Chinese bombed by Japan every day. So Chiang Kai-shek keeps sending cable to my father, say, you have to come to Chongqing. You can't stay in Hong Kong. That's not for you. You must come back to fight Japanese. This is my Hong Kong experience. I stayed in Hong Kong elementary school. The first 3 months, I couldn't get along with the kids because they speak Cantonese. After 3 months, I spoke very good Cantonese. So I became one of the Cantonese students, so they liked me. That's why I learned Cantonese language. I still speak from time to time, not often, but when I go to Chinatown, I speak Cantonese. But people still understand. I kind of, in Hong Kong, I really enjoyed it. From 1939 to the fall 1939, Chiang Kai-shek said, your father cannot stay in Hong Kong. Either you come to Chongqing or you go somewhere else. So he asked me to go to the U.S. as head of military delegation for Chinese national government. That's the reason to make sure you're not going to support Wang Jingwei in the puppet regime in 1939. In 1939, Wang Jingwei went to Shanghai, organized the puppet regime, 伪政府 with Zhou Bohai, Chen Gongguo, these people, in Shanghai later on. And they asked my father to be the minister of Department of War, 军政部. My father said, no, I can't do that. I'll be a traitor for our country. But Chiang Kai-shek knows that. He said, you should go to the U.S. representing us to investigate what's the American military mission. First, my father, he didn't speak English. Come here, I don't have to. But he insisted, you must go to the U.S. So my father, okay. He went. So we haven't moved from Hong Kong. My mother didn't want to go to the United States. So we have to go to Shanghai with my sister and mother. My father and my 2 brothers and 2 personal secretaries went to the U.S. Stayed here from 1939 to 1941, July. He didn't like it. He didn't speak English. But he enjoyed eating hamburger, milkshake. He wrote me letters from San Francisco. He enjoyed visiting Niagara Falls, Yellowstone Park, and ordered the he at that time ambassador to the U.S. was Dr. Hu Shi. Hu Shi was a great scholar of China from 1960. He graduated from Columbia, and he and my father were very close friends when he was Beijing University president. So when he came over here, Hu Shi took good care of him. So that's why later on I had a chance to talk to Hu Shi in Washington D.C. here, in China Institute here, in 1949, early 50s, before he go back to Taiwan. So my father decided to go back to Chongqing. He returned from San Francisco back to Hong Kong. So my mother and my sister, we moved from Shanghai to Hong Kong in the summer, July 1941. My mother said, Chongqing too hot in summer. Let's wait until winter time, go to Chongqing. By the time December wanted to go, Pearl Harbor happened. Japan invaded Pearl Harbor. I remember very clearly, on December 8th morning, I was going to school with our servant, took me to the elementary school, and he said, come back, Japan attacked Hong Kong. I said, attacked Hong Kong. I saw the Japanese gunboat chasing the British boat in the harbor. And then we went back to our home. I remember our home was at that time was in Daihangzhou, Datengdao, just in front of the Tiger Bomb Garden. I'm sure you know the Tiger Bomb Garden. Wumenbao Bisu. That's like a theme park. They have different kind of paintings and pagoda, and I go there every weekend to just play there. And we didn't know, underneath that Tiger Bomb Garden was a British fortress. So our home in front of the Tiger Bomb Garden was settled by Japanese from Kowloon side. Morning and night. our house was, the top floor is toward the Japanese foundry. So we have moved out to the Happy Valley in front of home near the race course. So we stayed there during the Japanese invasion of Hong Kong. At the end, I know Japan occupied Hong Kong on the Christmas Day in 1941. There's no way for the British to defend. But Japan took over Hong Kong. I think this is all in my book. I just want to give you my experience, what happened in Hong Kong and my childhood days. I didn't feel any, I was not afraid. I still go out to sleep to watch movies. I remember I saw a movie called, played by Charlie Chaplin, The Great Dictator. Oh, wonderful. So that's a very good movie. I still have a DVD now. And The Great Dictator. Kind of a relative. I just so happy to see those movies in Hong Kong. I still go to see them out of Japan, but the movie theater is open. So one day, I remember waiting, come after lunch, we had to be staying home. And all of a sudden, about 10 Japanese motor cars parked in front of our home. My mother getting worried. The Japanese army arrested my father once. As a kid, I looked out the window, a Japanese uniformed person together with two soldiers. I found those. The servant opened the door. And the Japanese officer gave a business card to our servant. And the servant gave my father. My father, let him come in. General Sakai was occupying general in Hong Kong, the #1 commander in Hong Kong. He visited my father here, and my father was classmate in Japan in 1915. So he came over, not trying to arrest my father. Asked my father, what can I do for you? He said, General, I was asked by Tojo to see you here. The war criminal, but they were all classmates from 1915 to 1919 in Japan. So the Japanese General Sakai, offered my father, what do you want? We need food. The Japanese burned down the granary, destroyed for rice and food. So no problem. We delivered 2 truckloads of food for you. My father said, I want to go to Chongqing. He said, that I can't do. I can send to Chongqing. You want to go to Beijing, Shanghai, any place I'll send you. Finally, my father couldn't go anywhere. How many people are going? Well, 40-some people. The Japanese Sakai shop. 40-some people go to Shanghai. The whole boat will be taking the whole family to go out. My father was about right. So he assigned a cargo ship to take our whole family from Hong Kong. Now it's the Jinshaoji buried there. Was the dock. And 1,000 tons took us from Hong Kong to Shanghai. In the meantime, American submarines tried to torpedo all the Japanese cargo ships. It took 3 days from Hong Kong to go to Shanghai. One to Shanghai, and again, we had pretty good arrangement in Shanghai. Now, I think that the Japanese generals also were human. If you know that. So my father studied Japan first together with Chandrasek and Zhang Xun. They were in Japan from 1908 to 1910. And then he got sent back by Yankai, continued study at Japanese Military Academy for another 4 years from 1915 to 1919. So he met a lot of future Japanese Imperial Army leaders. I don't know what his benefit, but at least he had a chance to not suffer during those war years. So we went back to Shanghai. From Shanghai, we come back to Tianjin, continuing back to Beijing. So we stayed in Beijing during the Japanese occupation. Then I started to go to junior high school. By the time World War II ended, I was in 30 years junior high. I remember everything. I studied Japanese for 2 years, and the Japanese teacher. I hate Japanese. But the teacher told me, you guys, I know you hate Japanese, but you don't hate the language. You learn the language, always useful. I think what's right. I learned 2 years Japanese. When I came here to the Japanese Congress, do you know Japanese? I know Japanese. I really know some Japanese. Not good, but I can write some simple Japanese transliteration and that kind of stuff. This is my wartime experience. Again, I want to tell you, in 1945, August, when I watched a Chinese play in Beijing theater, the play I remember was about Empress Dynasty, the end of Qing Dynasty, Qing Gongyuan. The playwright was Yao Ke, a Yale University drama department graduate, one of the most popular, well-known Chinese playwright directors. Later on, he went to Hong Kong. His play caused problems in Mao's China in 1957. The Qing Gongyuan. Later on, a movie made played by Zhou Xuan. I'm sure you know Zhou Xuan, and become a very popular movie. I watched a play in Beijing Theater. In the middle of the play, everybody shouted, "China, Japanese surrender! You're surrender!" Everybody coming out to the theater, celebrate, jumping up and down. I didn't know what happened. I came out of the theater too. Japan, and then listen to the Japanese emperor broadcasting surrender. The war started in 1937. I was in Beijing. The war ended in 1945. I was in Beijing. So I witnessed the beginning and the end of Sino-Japanese War from 1937 to 1945. I didn't know the implications of the war ended. But this is what I experienced in World War II. I grew up in this kind of Sino-Japanese War period. I don't know how many people here have experienced Sino-Japanese War. No? Probably have nobody experienced Pearl Harbor. Anybody here? Okay. Ben, you have experience. This is what I don't know what I should, you happy about it? At least I know what is war like, how you're going to, what's refugee feel like. As a little refugee, still you feel you're a refugee. My elementary school education and high school education all during this Sino-Japanese War, 8 years. Okay? And after the war, what am I going to do? My dream is I watch so many American movies. I want to go to the United States. The Hollywood influenced me to come to the United States. There are no American movie from 1941 to 1945. After 45, so many American movies coming to Beijing City. This is what I told my father. My brothers, they're still in the United States. After they come back, I'll go to the United States. My father said, you can't do that. You have to finish college before you go to the United States. Because your brothers, they don't know anything but Chinese culture. They went to the United States. They don't know Chinese history, nothing. You must study Chinese university. At least 2 years before you go to the United States. I talked to my mother. I said, you tell my father, what? Give me a chance to go. My father, with me, she told him, you have to go. That Wang Zi going to the United States. That's how I was lucky. My father finally gave in to my mother. I got a chance to go. If I go, at that time, the civil war between the Chinese communists and us was at 500 states. My father said, how can you go to the United States? You can't, there's no airplane, no train, no boat. What are you going to do? I was riding a bicycle to go to New York. two weeks from Beijing, Tianjin, and Changzhou, and Shandong, Jinan, and then in Qingdao. Qingdao is still under the national Chinese control. 2 weeks. I saw the countryside of China. It's so bad. I told myself, if China has no revolution, it's unfair to the poor people. You have to see how poor were the Chinese farmers, peasants. We stayed in the house owned by local farmers with straw as mattress. Sleep on the floor, eating dry Chinese bread, ganmanzhou. That's the only thing you can eat for 2 weeks. At that time, everybody was hoping when if Mao Zedong really going to revolution going to succeed, going to be better, everybody. Nobody can foresee what happened today in China, but in 1949, it was the Mao, no matter what, was better than the corruption of Kuomintang. But you look at Kuomintang, so-called Kuomintang corruption, Jiang Zhong Gong Chen. What is Jiang Zhong Gong Chen? Only 4 families. Now look at China today. The corruption in China. Probably so many families. But again, how many people remember this? I had the chance to meet all the Kuomintang leaders, from Chiang Kai-shek down to everybody in Nanjing. Because my father was very, I don't know how I should describe him. He always bring me to meet his old friends, the leading leaders of Chinese national. This so-and-so, my son, he should learn from you what kind of for that kind of expression of my father. That's why I met so many Chinese officials and scholars during my high school days in China. This was helped me later on. They know me. From Shanghai, after the Chinese communists took over Beijing, so-called liberated Beijing in January 1949, I was in Beijing. I went on the street to welcome the Liberation Army. But in the meantime, I was thinking, get out of the city, come to the United States. But you need a luqiao, a permission to leave Beijing. Of course, I know the public security commissioner. I went to see him. I said, Commissioner Tan Yingwen. I said, Tan Yingwen, I want to go to Shanghai. What for? I had my girlfriend in Shanghai. Which is true, I had a girl in high school in Beijing. She was in Shanghai. I said, I'm going to visit her. What's her name? I gave her name. I got permission. Make sure you come back now. I said, come back in a few years. I got the permission to travel from Beijing by truck, by bicycle, by horse car, 2 weeks. To Qingdao. From Qingdao, I bought an airplane ticket to Shanghai. Shanghai was a chaos. Everyone get out in Shanghai. That was March 1949. I don't want to bore you about this history of China in the 1940s, 49. And at that time, the Chinese Communist Army was already across the Yangtze River. Shanghai will be so-called liberated in very soon. I went to the China Travel Service in Shanghai. I have a classmate. His father worked there. I said, Yang Tongxue, my friend, Mr. Yang, I said, can I get an airplane ticket to Hong Kong? He said, no, airplane go to Hong Kong. I want to go to Taiwan. Taiwan too, I go to Taiwan. Can't get tickets. But his father came to see me, my classmate father. You have 2 ounce gold. Gold nugget, 2 ounce. That's what for. Not for me. I can get you to Taipei with 2 ounce gold. I said, okay, I get 2 ounce gold. I went to see my father's friend. He's a Guan in Shanghai. I said, Guan, I need 2 ounce gold. Would you lend it to me? I'll pay you back. He said, don't say that. I give you. He turned around, go about the safe, give me 2 ounce gold. Take it. What do you do with it? I said, I'm going to Hong Kong, Taiwan. Okay, go. I took 2 ounce. The Chinese travelers, I give 2 ounce gold to a assistant manager. And he told me, Mr. Wang, don't think I take it bribery. I'm not taking the gold. Somebody else is going to take the gold. If I give it to me, I'll give it to somebody else. Tomorrow afternoon, you're going to meet 2 pilots in the Longhua airport. Longhua was a military airport. I wait outside the gate. 2 Chinese airport pilots. Are you Wang Qi? I said, yes. Come in. We're walking to the airport. Follow us. I bought a small green military airplane, 2 pilots. I got an airplane. Where are the passengers? What are you about? You're the only passenger. How do people want to go to Hawaii and Hong Kong? You don't take, no, we don't take you. I only take you. So 2 pilots, myself, we took off, flew to Taipei in the evening. After getting off at Songshan Airport in Taipei, the pilot told me, Mr. Wang, do you have a car to pick up? I said, no. Where are you going? I said, Songshan Beilu, Shanduan, the 3rd section of Songshan North Road. It's a long walk. I said, yes. I walk anyway. I carry a small suitcase. I walk from Songshan Airport all the way to Songshan North Road, 3rd section. 3 hours walk. At night. When you're young, you can go out doing a lot of crazy things. I want to see my friend to go to Hong Kong. So I can get a passport, go to American consul visa, then I go to the United States. As far as admission, that's already done. I got a scholarship from Hong College. 4 years. Room and board and tuition. That's a good deal, right? So I worked with Taipei. My father had a house property in the 7th section, but nobody lived there. So I went to the neighbor, my father's friend. He also had a house in 7th Street. He said, how can you didn't tell me to come here? I couldn't tell you. He said, come in. And I said, I want to go to the United States. He said, let's go to somebody who can help you. Well, I make the story short. So I waited for 2 more weeks, 2 weeks, waiting for the Chinese Catholic bishop for 19, Paul Yubin. Yubin was the #1 of a Catholic priest in China, Archbishop Nanjing. He said, you'll be in Taipei. He just changed my to Hong Kong. So I went to Hong Kong to see him. He said, go to see Father Gao. He left with Hong Kong University. To give you a test. You pass the test, you go to the United States. And I said, what kind of test? Not SAT, no. Language, no. Just write a Chinese article. 1 page. Why do you want to go to the United States? I finished. Good. Then, tell me, go to, you got scholars from Marquette University, Milwaukee. I said, is there any Chinatown in oh, I know Chinatown in Milwaukee. I said, well, I afraid I can eat Chinese food. He said, you're a boy. But I like Chinese. I get a Chinese friend, student. So he said, come back tomorrow. How about New York City? I said, that's fine. Manhattan College. I got a letter from Manhattan College, 4 years. 6th floor in Shanghai, Hong Kong Central Bank. Mr. Miller was the vice consul. He walked in with me. He said, Mr. Miller, my friend Wang Ji wants to go to the United States. Do you have a visa for him? Wait for 1 hour. Yeah. I'm not trying to tell you I got free staying, but it's free. But it is. So I was lucky. And then he took me to China Airline office. The general manager, Mr. Liu Zhengyi, worked with my father in 1930. I went to see Archbishop took me to his office. I told Mr. Liu, I said, I'm going to the United States, my airplane ticket. He said, okay. He signed a slip. Go downstairs, get a ticket. And I paid no. Your ticket. I went downstairs. The lady gave me a ticket. Give me a dirty look. You guys have just unfair. Like you couldn't go to that. You go to that for what? You're not being graduated from college. I said, never mind, let me get my ticket. Took my ticket. And I waited for about 2 weeks. I celebrated in Hong Kong. I went to Repulse Bay to celebrate. My visa, my airline ticket, waiting for September 10th to take off from Kai-Tak Airport to France. And the rest is my story in the United States. I don't want to tell you how much, it's too long to tell you, but I just want to let you know I was a lucky young man from childhood to college age. But I was talking to myself, I told Meng Zhi, he said, you must be good student. You should not let the people help you if you regret they help you. First, you want to be a good student, do something for China, do something for the United States. I said, what do you mean do something for the United States? I'm not an American citizen. I waited for the last day I applied a green card. My father told me, you should never be American citizen. A Chinese or be Chinese. He said, your brother served in the U.S. Army at the end of World War II. He was naturalized American citizen. My father very, very upset. How can my son become American citizen? Naturalized. So I remember that kind of a comment. I told them, the immigration office, no, if you don't apply, we have to do something about you. We can deport you. No place to go. PRC don't want you. Taiwan they don't want you. Where are you going to go? A DP, displaced person, I don't want to be displaced. So finally the immigration option and pressure me, Mr. Wang, you must apply a green card application. Even if you get a green card, you don't have to be. You can change it later on. I'm a Chinese citizen. So when I submit my application, the last 5 minutes, the last day, I can apply. I got my green card in 3 months. That's where I am today. And then I met my future wife, and we got married, and I'm here. I got a job at Library of Congress. The same year, I got my green card. Before that, I worked for State Department for 3 years. Come talk about State Department. I was lucky again. I was in Beijing from 1945 to 46, 47, 48. I always go to American consulate in Beijing. I met a number of American diplomats. One gentleman called Howard Sullenberger. He was a missionary man. He lived in China for 18 years. He always talked to me, showed me American movies in the US library. I enjoyed it. My brother became American citizen. When he got married in Beijing, the American law required you must marry with an American consulate or embassy witness the marriage, the wedding. So when you see him at this Sullenberger, my brother get married, would you mind to come out to be the witness? Yeah, I'd be happy to. That's how we become good friends. I forgot about him when I come to the United States. I didn't talk to him. One day I was in a Chinese restaurant in D.C. about 1955. Yeah. come here. I've been here since 49. What are you doing? I said, well, listen, you want to work for me? I said, where am I going to work for State Department? I said, I'm not even a citizen. Don't worry about it. You come see me tomorrow. And they fall about him, State Department. I went there. You want to teach Chinese? My Chinese not that good. And someone offered a job, starting next week, teaching Chinese for junior foreign service officers. That's how I met a number of future American diplomats, including the future American ambassador to China, Ambassador David Roy. He was in my class. Quite a few. I don't want to mention too many names. This is example. But he said, look, there was somebody. I didn't look for a job. The job looked for me. In the meantime, Georgetown professor looking for a person teaching Chinese at Georgetown University. Zhang Yang. This is what I get involved with. State Department, U.S. government, and because I was State Department instructor for 3 years, I trained future American diplomats. In the meantime, Professor Zhang Yang at Georgetown University had a project, microfilm of the Japanese archives, Japanese Army, Navy, Air Force, which was confiscated by General Douglas MacArthur in Japan. But like thousands of boxes of archives. Japanese, how they planned to invade China, how they planned to invade Pearl Harbor, this kind of archive, all in the archive. So she applied a grant with Ford Foundation, required for 3 or 4 years to microfilm all the archive into microfilm. He hired me as supervisor for the project. I took it. But unfortunately, at the end of that year, in December, Japan demanded to take him back to Tokyo. State Department gave in, so they took him back. One thing is about 200 reels back of him, still in Library of Congress. That's how I got my Library of Congress job. It's lucky. I also saw many names in the Japanese archive. Especially in my father, Wang Jingwei, Liu Shaoqi, Mao Zedong. We had the archive covers Communist archive, Kuomintang archive, Popular Regime archive. It's a fascinating archive. Now you can't see them anymore, but they took it back in Japan. That's why I became interested in Chinese history. You see so many names. I said, I know these people. They did a lot of bad things. I didn't know that until I saw the archive. So this is a lesson for me to appreciate Chinese history, particularly modern history. How Japan invaded China, how they planned to invade different cities, the 1919 atrocities. By the way, I'm sure you know the book Rape 19 by Iris Chang. Iris Chang was my friend, and when she graduated from University of Illinois, she wanted to write a book. She got a grant from MacArthur Foundation. She came to see me and said, I want to write a book about the Nanjing Massacre. I said, what do you know about that? She said, I don't know. Do you read Chinese? I don't read Chinese. How can you write? You can help me. I can't help it translate the Chinese English. You help me. So this lady, very persistent, I helped her a lot in Library of Congress. For 2 years, finished her. Anyway, this is what I work for Library of Congress. And I didn't want to work for Library of Congress for 47 years, maybe 1 year, 2 years. But I like the job. The job is so fascinating. It's not just you circulate books to readers. It's really you doing research for the Congress, for U.S. government. It's a think tank for U.S. government, particularly for Congress. Because of that job, I got a chance to meet many senators and members of Congress that are interested in China. Particularly during the years before Nixon trip to China and after Nixon trip to China, the senators every day call me, want come over to the office, want to talk about this and that, including Senator Mac Mansfield, Senator Charles Percy, Senator Hugh Scott, Ted Kennedy. Involved in Chinese. Kennedy helped Chinese people for immigration problem a lot. The job is a fascinating job. It's not, people say it's boring, you know, you're going to, like, stereotype a librarian. No, it's not that kind of a job. Because like books, like people, you have that two interests, you can be a good librarian. As a librarian, you're getting involved with other scholars. That's why I was able to help people, help other friends, establish a foundation, U.S.-China Policy Foundation. I don't want to go into details about the library. I think this is what I really enjoy. And then in the meantime, I said, just work for library, it's not good enough. I want to get a degree in history, and history. And why, future wife, she was already studied at Georgetown. She said, you go to see Father Seabees, a Jesuit priest. She'll help you get into, I said, my major was agriculture. How could major agriculture get a degree in history? I said, I'm not a farmer. Because my father wanted me to study agriculture. I followed my father based on Confucian tradition. You must listen to your father. I got a degree in agriculture in 1957. And Father Seabees taught me, he said, Wangji, you're not history major. How can you get history? Make up 24 credits. You get A and B's and letter D. That's right. You finish another 24 credits in Georgetown. American history, world history, European history, and French history. 4 courses. 24 credits. I was admitted to the PhD program in Georgetown. Anytime I work in Georgetown, next time I go to school in Georgetown. After 7 years, long haul. Finally, I got my degree. I did not tell anybody in the 7 years. I keep a secret. I don't want to lose face. If I fail my comprehensive, where am I going to see my colleague in Harvard College? This guy doesn't know what he's doing. So I got my PhD. Everybody in Harvard College was shocked. How could you? She said, "Come, Xiao Wang, little Wang, how can you get this degree? We can't even get a degree in Georgetown." I said, "You work hard, you do it. 7 years, long time." So anybody wants to do this, you can do it. You can get a degree from Columbia, you can get it from Harvard, and any place you want to do it, you can do it. No such thing you cannot do it. If I can do it as a student from China, you can do it. But the thing is, do you have that interest or determination? That's what it is. Doesn't mean you get a degree, make it better. At least something you want to fulfill, the wish. After I get a degree, Georgetown University offered me a teaching job. Can I get better? I work daytime, nighttime, teaching 1 course or 2 courses in Georgetown. Since 1968, 69. What else I can do? Nothing. I'm so happy. If you want to be so-called a student of China, for Chinese history, I've been teaching Chinese history, American-China relations since 69. I don't think I can ask you for anything else. You mean that every summer I go to teach at different universities? Yale, Columbia, Hawaii. I'm happy. Tell you what, I'm a happy person. That's why I can write a book. If I'm too depressed, I won't write a book. I hope that this story is not boring you. But I think I better stop here, and you can read a book. You have a book. If you have, I give a copy. Okay. This is my 3rd time of book signing. I did this in Washington twice, in Nurse Club and Customs Club, and this is the 3rd time. And I see a lot of friends of mine. They know my story already. I don't want to bore you again, tell you the same story. And any questions?
Yes.
If there are questions, please ask.
Yes.
I would like to know, when you landed in New York in 1949, and you started college, I think Manhattan College?
Right.
How did you enroll if you couldn't speak English?
Good question. I did not take any course. I took a course in English language. English course. To learn English.
Before you went to Manhattan College?
No, before I went to Manhattan, I learned English language in Chinese high school.
Ah.
English language is required by Chinese school from 4th grade.
Okay.
But when you learn a language in China, it's always not good enough.
Of course.
And even today, English is still my second language. You cannot be, this English cannot be my first language, unless I'm born here. Yes.
Having taught English in college for many years, I would meet many students who would insist that they know English. Some of them from India or all sorts of places, and they insisted that their English was perfect because they had studied it in their homeland. But of course, they didn't understand that there was a difference between your first language and your second language. And the kind of English you learned in India wasn't the kind of English that was very helpful in New York.
Let me tell you something. Since the question about English, to many foreign students, including Chinese, Japanese, Latin American students come here to study. If they study graduate school, it's much easier to get a degree, MA and PhD. Because if you really specialize, take a course to your special interest. If you're an engineer, take a civil engineering course. If you take in undergrad, you take about so many credits, English literature, 6 year and PhD. I have no idea what THD is, Robert Ford is. But you have to study 12 credits, 4 courses, English 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, that was a difficult course for me. I have 2 other classmates from the Chinese embassy. They all flunked out because they couldn't pass English. I was lucky to have a teacher, Mr. Drumred. She was a candidate for PhD in England at Maryland University. She said, I think you have talent in literature. She gave me a special coach. Every day after class, I began interested in Eugene O'Neill.
I wish you were my student.
She said, I'll see to it, you get a degree from Maryland University. I passed 4 courses, English 1, 2, 3, 4, for the same teacher.
Yes, Mr. Mike, thanks very much for it. Your story is truly compelling. The question I have as you continue to lecture about the U.S.-China relations, what do you think is most misunderstood about China in the United States and also about the United States in China?
Well, that's very good, very good question, very difficult question. I really don't know how to answer your question, but I think the Chinese people probably understand more about America. Because in China, there are more people study English, they read more American newspapers, they have more interest in America. How many Americans are really interested in China? Only the business people. How many students? Very small percentage. Now, we have about more than 100,000 Chinese students from mainland China in the United States. How many American students in China? As we need more young people from this country go to China, stay there, not just a summer, stay abroad. That wouldn't help you. Only you travel to Xi'an, to Shanghai, I said come back and you really don't learn the language. You learn something about the city. But you still, together with your American students, that's no good. You have to stay with your Chinese family, Chinese students. If you go to China, stay for 2 years, let's say, get an MA program, get an MA degree from Beijing or whatever university in China. Then you really understand China. That's why just last few days about this saga of this Chen, and how many Americans really understand China. If Mr. Chen come here, what he can do here? He can do lots in China.
Exactly.
Why can study NYU Law School? Come, give me a break.
Thank you.
Two, if you don't mind, two very short questions. One, how much of the Library of Congress this is my ignorance, is accessible to the ordinary American citizen? And the other question is, what did you do your PhD dissertation on?
Okay. I tell you, the Library of Congress, now if I'm still the Chinese section chief, okay, if we go to become number, I would like to have all the access you can. But now the new policy is nobody can go to bookstacks. You only can see the catalog card. You digital, online, or maybe catalog card. That's not very good. And you can't go to see the bookstack. So you don't find it. I hope because 9/11, everything changes in the Library of Congress. And it's a pretty good access, but not as good as the reader one. And a lot of professors, grad students complain about this. I don't know how, when they can change it. Like when I was there in the 1980s, 90s, and but something they will. I think it's you look at the digital online and not as a book itself. That's why you go to airplane, you read a book, read on Kindle, it's different feeling. The second question about the topic of my dissertation about Chinese warlords. Because I have personal experience. My dissertation was about the young marshal who kidnapped Chiang Kai-shek. About his life from 1928 to 1931. 3 years.
And your dissertation?
Title?
That's the title. That one, I see.
I shall title, okay. Young Marshal Zhang Xueliang, and my 3 year, 1928, 1931.
Sir.
Hi, Dr. Wang. Thank you for your interesting story. If you don't mind, may I ask you some kind of other question, large sense question? Do you mind?
No, I
Oh, okay. Yeah. Every morning when we wake up, we heard news, bombing, killing. I think most of us would feel frustrated. What's going on in this world? And we have a theory, Dr. Huntington, the conflict of two civilizations. Now, it seems the world, the people of the world sees the events according to this theory. I don't want to explore this theory is positive or otherwise. But I want to say this, since you are an experienced scholar and knows the history of the Chinese and Asian society, what about the civilization of the East, the Chinese? We have Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Tao, and they advocate harmonious world, balance. And if you don't like this, don't impose to this on some others. So it seems to me we can explore this theory to solve as a solution to the current problems we are facing in the world. I want to, your opinion, or if you can elaborate what I'm saying here. Thank you.
That's not a loaded question, sir. How can I answer your question? But I can tell you my personal observation and my personal comment. Okay, not based on Huntington's counter civilization kind of theory. That's something very, very controversial, and nobody going to agree with each other. Okay, but I think I agree with you. The Chinese has a long civilization. And I think that we need people like in China, like Huntington. We need in China people like maybe the past, like Hu Shi, can introduce the Chinese civilization in a way understandable by Westerners. Now, many of the students come from China. Today, in the past, majority of them are studying engineering and science. How many of you, can you tell me how many professors teaching in major American universities are teaching humanities and civilization and history? You tell me now. Almost everybody teaching computer. I discussed some questions with Dr. Jason Needham in 1976. I invited him to come to Library Congress, give a 2-day seminar about his experience on compiling his science and civilization in China. I asked myself, why Chinese like behind? It's a good question. He said there should be more Chinese scholars writing about China's civilization, philosophy in its own language. Only one person written philosophy of China. Who else? Can you tell me in the United States, the person has written about Chinese philosophy was Oscar Wilde. He passed away. And in history, I ever talk about Zheng and Spence. Who else in Chinese research? Tell me.
So maybe we can ask the Confucius Institute to
It's fine. But when I'm on language, talk about philosophy and civilization, the different kind of knowledge. And I think I would recommend in the future more and more Chinese or Asian Americans, whatever, publish more books on the Eastern side of the story about humankind. Now, everybody in the West is influenced by Western civilization. How much, like you say, what's Eastern civilization? The two most popular
I think I have something to add. I think people in this country should come to China and see a little more. Particularly, now I'm not trying to hustle for another society. If Americans who are interested in China or the entire Asia, they should come to more events at the Roman Society. We're functioning here as a bridge to bridge the two cultures. And once they understand what's on our mind, they'll understand better. I think this might be one of the answers. I mean, the answers can be so many, but I think this may be one of the answers. I think understanding will bring to some kind of excommunication. Some Americans say, understand all is to forgive all. So I have a few students here. Once they understand the Chinese language and see the culture as it is reflected in the language, they begin to feel differently about the Chinese, China, its culture, its history, and everything. I think this is the job that we have to do at China Institute, and particularly He-Yu and myself at the Renwen Society. Now again, I may sound like I'm hustling for our society, but I'm not. This is coming from the depth of my heart. I'm not sure if I make sense, but I'm trying. Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. 2 more questions, please.
Yes, Mr. Wang. You said you are a lucky man, especially you were a lucky young boy when you were at a good age. And I think so. So you got your scholarship, you got your visa, you got good education, and you like your job and the job likes you. So you're so successful and you deserve all your the title now. I really respect you. And so for the people not as lucky as you, like the first generation immigrant or the second generation, so especially when they are struggling to find job or choose career make them American dream come true or slur both anti-American and both?
I wish I could answer your question. I'm not a job counselor.
If I may, Dr. Wang, if I may, in the Chinese language there is a proverb. It is 吉人天下. The meaning is, if you are a wonderful person, if you are a person who has gumption, you have the will, heaven will help you. And I think it wasn't just luck. I think Dr. Wang was being modest. It was not just luck. He had the gumption in him. He had the will. So God came down to help him. And when I say God, it may not be one person. I'm talking about a divine force. So 吉人天下 in Chinese, it's a good saying, which means if you're a person of auspiciousness, or you have gumption, if you have good will, you have good intention, God or gods will come down to help you. So I think to answer that question, the first thing is that we must have this will in us. We must have this, if I may, stubbornness in you. Hold on to your belief and try, as Dr. Wang mentioned before. So I think, this is my own opinion, I might be wrong, but I don't think Mr. Wang had only luck that goes with him. Lady luck doesn't just go with anybody. Lady luck goes with people who have the will, who have the gumption, who have the wish, who have the willpower to succeed. I hope I'm right. And one more question. There was a lady.
I was just going to ask, in the course of your story, you mentioned that you wanted to go, the family wanted to go to Chongqing, but you couldn't go to Chongqing. I remember...
He didn't want to go to. It's not that he couldn't.
He didn't want to go? I thought that was
the
one of
Japanese
the places.
told him he couldn't go.
Exactly.
But in the beginning, it's not.
Isn't Chongqing the place that the Flying Tigers are associated with, the American
That was the war
pilots?
capital, wartime capital of China.
And this was during wartime. I wonder if that's why they didn't let him go.
That's right. Because Japanese was at war with Chongqing. The Japanese general could not allow anybody else to go to Chongqing. And that way he would help an enemy go to Chongqing. And otherwise, the family wanted to go to Chongqing, but my father didn't know what he could do in Chongqing.
Okay, one final question.
Speaking of your personal journey, I'm just interested in can you share with us your personal journey on your faith? Over you have this long span of you went through a lot of probably very adventurous. Like, what is your personal faith?
自己有没有什么特别经过的一个，好像特别有趣的，特别有启发您灵感的事情？我想就是我姐姐吧。
Right, like Buddhism or Taoism or like Christianity. Do you have any experience with those? Thank you.
Well, like later on, Cardinal Paul Yubin, he gave up on me. He said, "You're not a very religious man." He said, "I have to baptize your son as a Catholic." And that's fine. So my son was a Catholic. When he came here, when he became Cardinal in 1969, he called me, "Wangji, you try to stay away from me. Now, your son is not, he was 3 months old. I want to baptize your son." And I said, "That's fine." So we went to the Trinity Church at Georgetown University, and he really baptized my son. And that's my son was baptized by a Chinese convert. He said, "This is my first baptism given to a friend of mine. You're a good friend of mine. Oh, you're sure Jin Wang will be a Catholic." How much that changed my sin? I don't know.
Did it change you?
I think that's what kind of made me. Before I got married, let me tell you, I don't know how many Catholics I do. If you're Catholic, when you get married, your partner is not Catholic, the partner must be taking lessons from another Catholic priest for so many times. Teach you, don't do this, don't do that. What the heck is this? So many. I'm not disrespect religion, but just, I believe my father for me. As long as you be a good human being, that's good enough. I'm pretty much Confucian, follow Confucian teaching. Just a way with theory.
I think before the book signing session starts, if you would bear with me, okay, after Dr. Wang's talk, I remember 2 lines by a great 8th century poet, contemporary of Li Bai. His name was Li Qi, when he said 2 lines. 一生已动，物皆尽；四座无言，心欲息. This is what I get from listening to Dr. Wang's speech about his early life, his story of success, based on his will. I feel those 2 lines, it means loosely, this is my far from being ideal translation. 一言以动，物皆尽. All is quieted as the resonant sounds are uttered. With men silent in rapture, and stars are dispersing. These are the 2 lines that enter my mind. So, did I say that here we have a legend of Chinese culture, and in a way he's a great statesman? Is it true or what?
Tell one story. I want to say, I started the Georgetown graduate program with my wife's encouragement. She introduced me to a professor about the Jewish history. He gave me, opened the door for me to go into academic. And also because of her, she said, we only can for one person go to work on PhD. So you go ahead, be the first one to finish your PhD program, and she will finish the second one. So I finished my PhD program in '69, finished her program until my son grew up in 1987. He waited for a long time. I want to say that.
One more minute. Today's event is made more memorable and emotional for me because of a wonderful, happy reunion between me and my god sister, the daughter of my beloved and loving grandparents, who is Dr. Xie, who is also Mrs. Wang. We haven't seen each other in years. And when I heard about the news that she was coming, I was elated. And so, as this now, these days, it may sound like a little cliche to say that behind every great man, there's a great woman. I think it's the reverse. Behind a great woman, there's a great man. As such, I believe is the real case in the case of Dr. Wang and Dr. Xie, Mrs. Wang. So this is my sister. I call her Jia Jia. In Shanghai dialect, it's sister. And this is Mrs. Xie. Now, before the book signing session officially starts, the Renwen Society, we have prepared a very small, very humble gift for our preeminent speaker, Dr. Wang. So, He Yu and I will